For more than half of American history, the wilderness was a fearsome barrier, an adversary to conquer and destroy. Pioneers in this unforgiving land did not set a value on saving part of the country for future generations, but gradually, as frontiers were settled and more Americans became city dwellers, the land seemed less an opponent. By the second half of the 19th century, the impact of an urban industrial way of life, along with new ideas about nature, expressed by such men as Emerson and Thoreau, influenced increasing numbers of American people. There emerged a new national feeling for the wilderness as a distinctive and valuable characteristic of this country. A movement began to preserve some of the remaining land, especially the commanding features of an imposing valley in the heart of the Sierra Nevada. In the dark hours of the Civil War, when Grant and Lee were engaged in deadly conflict, and Sherman was beginning his siege on Atlanta, the Yosemite Grant was passed by Congress, protecting a valley and a grove of trees that were a continent away from the bitter struggle. Although the land grant was made to the state, the grant itself was of national importance. It set a precedent. This was the first time any government had put aside public land to preserve its natural beauty for the enjoyment of all people. Carved from the Sierra Nevada's ancient core, Yosemite's granite landscape invites you to reawaken your relationship to the natural world, to sense its excitement and discover its serenity. I am Telly Savalas. Let's take a closer look. It seems to arise on the rim of the earth, this mighty mountain range of snow-crusted granite spires and buttresses. From the high desert on the eastern side of its abrupt cliffs, to the west, where snow-fed streams and forested slopes run quickly to meet the waiting sea, it is a scant 40 to 80 miles in width. crossed the Sierra in February of 1844 after an Indian had warned, rock upon rock, snow upon snow, even if you get over the snow, you will not be able to get down from the mountain. Eagerly pressing on the trail breakers' heels were the miners, pan and pickaxe in hand, the westerly sun in their eyes, dimmed by the visionary glitter of precious metal in rock and stream, and the immigrants, wagon trains snaking across the plains, the dust of their numbers raising clouds of portent across the horizon. For the inhabitants of a sylvan valley, cradled by walls of granite in the very heart of the range, a tranquil way of life would soon come to an end. Native Americans had occupied the valley for perhaps 4,000 years. At the time of the pioneers' entrance, there were almost 200 in residence. They were a mixture of Miwok and Paiute. They called themselves the Awanichi, people or dwellers. The valley was called Awani, place of the gaping mouth. The frenzy of the gold rush in 1849 carried swarms of miners into the Sierra and up to the foothills of the hidden valley. The influx of new settlers and their abusive and arrogant treatment of the Indians eventually led to conflict. In March of 1851, the Mariposa Battalion rode into the valley stronghold in pursuit of the Indians who had raided 2 trading posts. In the words of Lafayette Barnell of the Mariposa Battalion, "We were not a party of tourists seeking recreation, nor philosophers investigating the operations of nature. Our business there was to find Indians who were endeavoring to escape from our charitable intentions toward them." That evening in camp on a meadow in view of Bridal Veil Fall, the first non-Indian people to enter the valley gave it the name Yosemite, based on a word mistakenly thought to mean grizzly bear. In June, near Tenaya Lake, the Indians were taken into custody by troops and escorted to the Fresno River Indian Reservation. Chief Tenaya and some of his people were later permitted to leave the reservation and return to the valley. Further conflict in 1852 between Indians and prospectors, resulting in the death of 2 miners and the execution of 5 Awanichi, led to the Indians' flight over the mountain and the death of Chief Tenaya in 1853. Without his leadership, the Awanichi dispersed. Only a few returned to live once more in their valley. The cooking fires of the Awanichi are dead, their pungent smoke no longer wafting into the clear, fresh air. The granite cliffs that for thousands of years echoed songs and the chants of ceremonial prayers and dance stand in silent testimony to their memory. Most of the culture and history, orally passed on by the generations, was lost with the dispersion of the people. But the memory lives on in the Indian village, where interpretation of the Miwok Paiute culture is provided by Indian cultural demonstrators of the National Park Service. The hungi, or roundhouse, was used for ceremonial dancing and prayer. Oak posts were lashed with grapevine, then shingled with incense cedar bark. The umacha, or dwelling of the Miwok, is constructed of the same materials as the hungi. Chakas were used as acorn granaries and were capable of holding 500 pounds. Acorns, once eagerly gathered as a food source by the Indians, fall quietly from tall oaks and are collected by squirrels, bears, birds, and a few modern Native Americans who practice some of the old ways. The granite acorn pounding rock was of central importance in daily village life, for the acorn was a predominant food. The basket was an essential tool for cooking, storage, and many other purposes. Basket weaving was a highly developed utilitarian art form in the California Indian culture. The legacy of the Native Americans' culture is the harmony in which they lived with the environment, balancing their needs with the bounty provided by nature. It was a similar sense of harmony which was the inspiration for the concept of preservation of wildlands, first implemented in Yosemite, then the nation, and around the world. In 1855, James Hutchings and the first tourist party visited Yosemite in search of material for his new California magazine. With him was artist Thomas Ayres, who would illustrate their discoveries. Their written and pictorial representation of the valley's wonders prompted others to make the trip. The number of visitors increased, although for 19 years it was accessible only by a strenuous and terrifying journey on horseback or mule. Trails suitable for pack animals connected mining camps and small settlements in the Sierra. With the discovery of gold and silver lodes, roads were frantically hacked out with pick and shovel. But it would be 1874 before wagon roads into Yosemite Valley would be completed. During the 40-year era of the stagecoach, the ride into Yosemite was as harrowing for the passengers as the trip by horseback. The pace was rapid, the turns angular, and eternity was the destiny of anyone who went over the edge. With the tourists came those to tend to their needs. The first hotel, a simple structure, was completed in 1856. As more trails were built and tourism increased, other hotels quickly followed. However, not all who arrived were interested in the Yosemite region as a scenic treasure. With people came their animals. They overgrazed the meadows, compacted the soil, and ultimately changed the face of the land. In the early 1860s, it was noted that the valley was being adversely affected by homesteading and the Mariposa Grove of big trees by commercial special interests. A new concept of Yosemite began to evolve, that of a natural park that people could not alter without restrictions. It culminated in 1864, when the Yosemite Grant was passed by Congress and signed by President Abraham Lincoln, ceding Yosemite Valley and the Mariposa Grove of giant sequoias to the state of California for management and protection. Under the Homestead Act of 1862, families could acquire a permanent title to their land by living on it. However, the Yosemite Grant precluded private ownership, and in 1875, the pre-park landholders lost their claim. Still, the valley and the surrounding countryside were in a steadily deteriorating state under the unregulated impact of man and beast. But there was a recent arrival on the scene, an eloquent spokesman who would be instrumental in making significant changes.